StrayAllDay.com.
Tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is 3 success distinctions. I'm going to explain what that means and why this is a topic in a moment. Before we get into that, let me tell everybody 2 things. First of all, my daily motivation text, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start the day. If you want to receive that message, all you got to do is text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. You'll be getting that text next time that I send it out. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That's the only place that I do any coaching, any direct mentoring. Any of you want to work with me directly, there is a way to do it. The catch to that way is that there is only one way, and that is in Work on Your Game University. So the link is down below in the description. It is simply workonyourgameuniversity.com. So with all that out the way, let's get into today's topic, which is 3 success distinctions. Let's get a definition of this word distinction so we're all on the same page. A distinction is defined as a difference or contrast between similar things or people. So a distinction is basically the details that make the difference between 2 things that most people will look at and think are pretty much the same, but they're not the same. I'm going to point out 3 specific ones. I'm going to tell you why there is a distinction between thing A and thing B that many people may sometimes use interchangeably, even though they should not be used interchangeably, because then I'm going to explain why they should not be used interchangeably. And I'm going to tell you why these 3 specific ones matter so much and how the difference between them makes a big difference in your success when you understand these differences. I'm going to lay out these contrasts, again, 3 specific contrasts, distinctions that everybody should understand. And I'm going to aim to make sure that you stay on the side of each distinction that will actually help you get to where you want to go. Because there's a side of each that you would probably prefer to be on. And as I explain these out, you'll probably understand through your own personal reasoning and through context clues as well, and through me literally saying it to you, which side you probably want to be on of each one of these. So now that we got all that out the way, let's get into it. Topic once again is 3 success distinctions. Point number 1, hearing versus listening. Hearing versus listening. Now, the key difference between hearing and listening is attention. Okay? Hearing means you are recognizing that a sound has taken place. Listening is giving your attention to the sound that is taking place. There's an old question that says, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, the question is, does it make a sound? Well, it's like a philosophical question, because is there a sound? Well, if a tree falls, I would guess that there is some sound that's going to be made given the size of the tree, and that we don't know how big the tree is, but assuming that it falls, there's some type of sound that makes it happen. And the question is, does someone have to recognize the sound for there to be a sound? And I don't know what the science is behind that, but I would say when it comes to humans, does it make a sound? If nobody's there to hear it, then there is no sound, because it doesn't register anywhere. But the point is, many people can do a lot of hearing of material and hearing of words, but they're not actually listening. They're not giving their full attention to it. So there's no absorption. Even though you can hear, but there is no absorption. You're not able to listen. It's like if you're in a big crowd. I was at a conference a week ago, and there was thousands of people there, probably 5,000 to 7,000 people at this conference. And when there was nobody on the mic talking and everyone was just talking amongst themselves, you could hear that there was a bunch of people in the room all talking to each other, but you couldn't really listen to any one individual if you were just noticing the cacophony of sounds happening. So I could hear it, but I wasn't really listening. So if you go to the mall, for example, on a Saturday afternoon, you can walk through the crowded mall and notice all the voices that are being used, but you may not really perceive any of the myriad conversations that are taking place around you. Even though you can hear them, you can't really listen to everybody. But at the same time, if you're walking through that same mall with the same crowd of people, and you have a friend with you, and that friend is talking in your ear or just talking directly to you, you'll probably notice a lot of what that friend is saying because you are listening to them. You're giving your attention to tuning out all the other sounds around you, the stuff that you're hearing, so you can listen to that one individual. So the whole point here is many people do a lot of hearing, but very little listening. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean in conversation or when you're amongst a crowd of people trying to listen to your friend. What I mean by that is people read books but don't apply what they've read in the book. So you heard, quote unquote, what was in the book, but you didn't listen to what was in the book. I'm using that as a metaphor, even if I'm not talking about an audiobook. People watch YouTube videos and take courses, but don't implement anything that they have taken in from the book. So you heard everything that was in the course, you heard everything that the YouTube video said, but you weren't really listening because you didn't do any of the stuff. Successful people, everyone, listen to the most important things that they need to know about and they implement. So if you want to know if you're listening to something, just ask yourself if you have implemented or acted on what you heard. That's real listening. You have to be given attention to something in order to listen. I told this story maybe a couple of weeks back when I was at basketball practice as a teenager, and the coach was talking to us during practice, and he called out one of my teammates who clearly was not paying attention and asked the player, "What did I just say?" The player couldn't answer the question, and the coach kicked that player out of practice. Why? Because he had caught the player not listening, not literally not paying attention. Because he wasn't paying attention, he could hear that the coach was talking. He could register that there was a voice speaking, but he wasn't registering anything that was coming from that voice. Therefore, he was caught not paying attention, and he had to pay a price for that. Same thing happens in school sometimes. Any of you can remember your time in school, you're sitting in class, excuse me, and the teacher, excuse me, or professor was speaking, and you could even be looking right at them, and you could be recognizing the fact that they are saying something, but your mind is elsewhere besides on taking in and actually absorbing what the teacher is saying. And therefore, you sat through the class and you heard the entire lecture, but you weren't really listening. So you couldn't tell the teacher back anything that they just said over the last 40 minutes simply because your mind was somewhere else. Your attention was on something else, even though your ears could pick up their sound, you weren't really absorbing it. So there's a big difference between hearing and listening. Many of us hear a whole lot of things every single day. All of us hear a whole lot of things every single day, but we don't listen to everything that we hear. There are times when you should hear but not listen, but there are also times when you need to hear and you need to listen. And I would suggest when it comes to the things that are most important to you, as I said at the end of this point, successful people listen to the most important things that they need to know about, and they go and implement them, and they can implement because they were paying attention. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is 3 success distinctions. This is distinction, making sure you understand the clear difference between 2 things that appear to be the same thing. Number 2, consuming versus thinking. These are not the same. Now, this is directly related to what we talked about in the first point, because you don't want to become what I call the PIG, PIG, which stands for Professional Information Gatherer. I talked about this in my book, Work on Your Game, which you can order, by the way, at workonyourgamebook.com if you don't have it already. Consuming lots of information is a good thing if and when you are listening to what you're consuming and you're implementing where things need implementation. So it's cool to consume a whole bunch of information if you are actually putting that information to physical use. You're actually applying that information and doing something with it. If you are merely consuming information, however, and not taking time to consider how what you are consuming could actually apply to you, and then actually doing the application, then you're not doing anything. This is what I call mental masturbation. You're being a professional information gatherer. So you're consuming all this information. You're reading all these books, taking courses, going to events, whatever it is that you're doing, signing up for people's free offers and challenges or whatever it happens to be, but you're not applying any of the stuff. Then what does it matter that you consume the information? All right, so now you have this information in your head, or at least some of it, the amount that you retained. You have the information in your head, but you haven't done anything with it. So what are you doing with the material that you're taking in? The time that you spend thinking about what you've consumed can help you come up with some ways to apply what you've consumed. Challenge for many people these days, because information is so ubiquitous and easily and readily available, is that people go from consumption to consumption to consumption of information, never giving themselves time to, or making themselves make time to consider and think about, what did I just consume and how can this actually apply to me? Therefore, they never actually apply it So they have all this consumption, but very few results to show for the consumption that they made. All right, this is how you become a professional information gatherer. So if you are merely consuming and not taking time to consider how these things apply to you, you're not doing anything. You might as well just go scroll through Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. I mean, it's pretty much you're pretty much going to get the exact same result if that's what you're going to do when it comes to your consumption. If you're going to read a book, for example, you should read a book with something that you can highlight or take notes with on the things that you are reading so that you know what to implement based on what you read in the book. Even better, you could just stop in the process of reading and go implement something before you keep reading, before you go into the next page or the next chapter. Not just reading a book just to say that you read the book. All right, how can you actually apply what you read in the book? This is what many people do because they don't take time to think. What they do is they consume and then just move on to the next consumption. Consume, move on to the next thing to consume. What's the next thing I can consume? What's the next book I can read? Next course I can take? The next YouTube video that I can watch? Because they never take time to consider, okay, what do I do next now with this information that I've just taken in? And many people simply don't take the time to think on things. You ever ask somebody a question and you ask them their opinion? Like, what do you think about this? And they answer with, I don't know. You ever had anybody do that? Have you ever done it? Somebody asked you your opinion on something, your response was, I don't know. Well, the thing is, the person who asked you the question was asking your opinion. So your opinion is not about necessarily about what you know. It's about what your opinion is. It's really about what you think, because someone's asking you your opinion. So opinion is usually based on things that we think. Now, your opinion can be based on things that you know as well. But let's say you don't know anything on the subject and somebody asks you your opinion. Your answer of I don't know is kind of a misnomer. It's a misleading answer because the person wasn't asking you, hey, what do you know about this? They said, what do you think about it? Rarely do you ever hear anybody respond to a question by saying, I don't think. But a lot of people respond by saying, I don't know. Well, look, here's the thing. We know that you don't know. All right, there's a lot of things that all of us do not know. Question was, what do you think? Now, there are a whole bunch of people who don't think, but they don't go around announcing it as easily as they go around announcing how much they don't know. All right, and I explained to you three truths about human beings: that people do not read, people are lazy, and most importantly, people don't think. People don't read, people are lazy, and most importantly, people don't think. Remember that Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, most popular self-help book ever written. Look at the title, Think and Grow Rich. Not consume and grow rich, think and grow rich. It's the thinking that leads to riches. It is not the consumption of information or tips or strategies or hacks that is going to make you grow rich. It's your thought process. The good thing about the thought process is that you can be coached and trained on how to improve your thought process by simply engaging with people who think in ways that are different from you and allowing your mind to be opened enough to absorb and receive those different levels of thinking when they are presented to you. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, we are talking 3 success distinctions. Number 3, desiring versus deciding. Now, to me, the most important point in today's class is this one right here: desire versus decision. Your current goals, are they things that you are wanting to achieve or that you have decided that you will achieve? Let me ask the question again. Look at your current goals, any one goal, 10 goals, 100 goals that you have, and ask yourself the question: are these things that you want to achieve, or are these things that you have decided that you will achieve? And there's a difference between wanting to do something and having already taken the action to do the something. There's completely different levels of the game. Now, I know what most people's questions will be most people's answers to the question of, do you want to achieve or have you decided that you achieve? If I ask that question to most people, especially if I give the explanation that I just give, most people's answer is going to be, well, decided to achieve. Frankly, here's the point, folks. I really don't give a damn what your answer is. All right, don't tell your answer to try to appease the person who asked the question. Give your answer straight up, whatever it is. So whatever needs to be addressed can be addressed. So if you say, I think most of you would say, that you would rather decide to achieve something, rather than just want something. I think most people would answer that way. Okay, so being that that's your answer, let's look at your actions and see if your actions match up to what you say. If your actions match your words. Let's look at your calendar. Let's look at your checkbook. And let's see if your behavior matches what you have claimed to be a decision that you have already made. Your decision is to get yourself in better shape. But I see that you just purchased a couple cupcakes the other day. Your decision is to have six-pack abs for next summer, but I can see you just ate a bucket of fried chicken from KFC. All right, so let's look at your schedule, how you're spending your time. Let's look at your checkbook, which is how you're spending your money. And you need to look at your calendar and ask yourself, does my past behavior match what I'm saying? Does my past behavior match what I'm saying? For most people, their desires never go any further than their mouth. So they get a desire, maybe in their stomach, maybe in their head, one way or another. But either way, it travels as far as their mouth, and they go and talk about whatever it is that they desire to do, and that's as far as they go. They never go any further than just talking about what they're going to do. This is what happens. Their desires never go any further than their mouths. So you think about something, talk about it, and that's pretty much it. People who achieve massive success in life do not merely want things. They do want things. That's one of the reasons they create success, because they want to be successful, but they don't stop at wanting. They go further than that. Now, a successful person's recognized desire may start off as a want. This is a thing that I want. But what they do is, successful people that is, they turn their wants into decisions by putting action behind them. Understand that anytime that you want something, the most important thing you do is make a decision and immediately act on it. Act on it as quickly as possible. So any decision that you make, the sooner you act on it, the first of all, that's when it really becomes a decision, when you actually do something. And many people talk about decisions semantically in a lot of different ways. I want to be clear that a true decision is followed by action. I want to make sure everybody understands it. If you made a decision and it's a real decision, there's an action that follows it. Now, if you made a decision and it's not real, then you could just be talking about it and nothing has actually happened. So, what successful people do is they commit themselves to the decisions that they made by putting actual behaviors on the calendar and holding themselves accountable to said behaviors. They hold themselves accountable to these behaviors because those behaviors are on the calendar, which is the schedule of their lives, telling them exactly what they need to be doing, how, why, when, and where. Let me offer a disclaimer at this point. This thing that I'm talking about, especially this third point, this is not easy to do. For most of you, this will not be easy. It'll be relatively difficult. Holding yourself to standards of behavior only on a consistent basis is hard work that requires structure and discipline. Let me say that again. Holding yourself to standards on a consistent basis is hard work that requires structure and discipline. The reason why many people are not consistent is because they have no structure and they have no discipline. And those are two more elements that can separate you from the masses if you actually happen to have them. And structure and discipline, this is something that those are things that you heard me talk about over and over again here on the show. You hear me talk about them over and over again more moving forward. I talk about these in my interviews. I talk about these in my books. When you have structure, structure produces discipline. When you're disciplined, it creates the confidence. Mental toughness defends both the discipline and the confidence. It defends the mind against outside attacks. So you want to keep all of these as strong as possible. And you want to get separate from the masses. Look around at what the masses are doing. Don't do it. Look around what the masses are not doing and make sure you do that. And two things the masses don't have in don't have at all, let alone in very small amounts, is structure and discipline. They had that, their circumstances would change relatively quickly. Let's recap today's class, which is 3 success distinctions. A distinction may be defined as a difference or contrast between similar things or people, or at least what we think are similar. Point number 1, hearing versus listening. Key difference between hearing and listening is simply paying attention. It's how you can be looking at somebody and they're talking, but you're not really registering any of the words that they're saying. They might stop talking and say, "Are you listening to me?" Because they can tell through your body language that maybe you're not paying as much of attention as your eyes are saying that you are. Point number 2, Consuming versus thinking. This is directly related to what we talked about in the first point. You get the professional information gatherers, people who are always gathering information, but at the same time, they are not actually applying any of the information that they gather. All right? Just because you have information does not mean you are going to apply it. It doesn't mean you're entitled to anything just from having information. So, how they say knowledge is power, applied knowledge can be power. Depends on what the knowledge is and how and when and where and for what reason that knowledge has been applied. So if you are listening to information and implementing it when things need implementation, that's good. That's what you should be doing. You're merely consuming and not taking time to consider how the things you have consumed have actually applied to you and then actually applying them, you're not doing anything. That's, again, you're mentally masturbating. So you might as well go look through TikTok or Facebook. It'll probably be a lot more fun than whatever it is that you're doing, and you're not even registering in your mind the fact that you're doing. You're going to read a book, bring an ink pen or a highlighter or something to some post-it notes so you can tag certain phrases or passages or book pages so you can come back to it and you can study the material. So Napoleon Hill, in his most popular self-help book, it's called literally Think and Grow Rich. All right, so if you want to grow rich, you got to think. But if you don't take time thinking because you're always consuming or you are doing other nonsense in between your points of consumption, well, your lack of thinking is going to cost you access to your own brain and maybe the brain of others who you might be able to access if you spend more time thinking about how can I make this work. Number 3, desiring versus deciding. Most important point in the class here. Your current goals, are they things that you want or things that you've decided on? There's a difference. Things that you want mean it would be nice to have it. Things you decided on meaning I am having it. I'm putting my name on it. I don't have it yet, but I will have it very soon. So whatever your answer is not really that important that you answer to me, but let's look at your actions to see if they match up. Let's look at your calendar. Let's look at your checkbook. Do your calendar and your checkbook reflect what you say your true desires are, your true decisions are? List what your decisions are that you're working with right now. Once you get them listed, go to the calendar app, look at the calendar and see, does your calendar schedule match up to what you say this is what you want? Does your checkbook match up? Meaning your financial transactions. So even if it's not a checkbook, go on your bank account, web page, your credit cards, if you have them. Do your decisions, the actions that you're taking, do they reflect your decisions financially and time-wise? For most people, their desires never grow any further than their mouths. They talk about what they want, they get a little bit of satisfaction from that, and that's pretty much all they do. Think about something, talk about it, that's as far as they go. People who achieve massive success do not merely want things. It may start as a want, but it turns into a decision by putting action behind it. They hold themselves accountable by putting actual behaviors on the calendar and holding themselves to them with a commitment. So disclaimer, this is not easy to do. Holding yourself to standards of behavior on a consistent basis is hard work. It requires structure and it requires discipline. Those are 2 more things that will separate you from the masses that you might hear about a little bit more in the future. So with all that said, text me and let me know you want me getting that daily motivation, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point. My number is 305-384-6894. Work on Your Game University. That is where I do all my coaching, working with people one-on-one. If you want to work with me directly, just go right there to that site, which is workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all